So what's going on? Well, what's happening is we've absolutely 100% changed the way we raise children. And we've done it in 100 years. The way we used to do it, for the first 20,000 years of child rearing, they were not pretty. We did not do a good job. I'm not trying to create a utopia of the past. Children died in disturbing numbers and they were routinely neglected and abused. We're much more aware of what children need from us, and for the most part it's a very good thing. But what's happened when we weren't looking, we suddenly took, in some ways, children's childhood away from them. Because they're no longer having an apprenticeship in reality. Instead, children are growing up their entire lives in adult, controlled realities. They're very infrequently out there in the wild fending for themselves, learning how to be anxious. The way we learn to be adaptively anxious is by trial and error. And doing something that hurts and realizing, ow, that hurt, don't do that again. And then we get a little bit anxious about that thing. We're going to call that model of learning through non-catastrophic, painful failure. That's how people learn to respect the world around them. Again, kids aren't having enough opportunity to learn that way. Why? Well, because look at how their lives are structured. When kids go out to play these days, there's less and less play just out in the streets in our communities. We raise our children in villages less and less. Generally, play is going to happen through a play day, often where parents have been involved in arranging and checking up on behavior later. If I'm playing sports, it's probably organized sports. It's increasingly organized sports, where we parents, of course, we worry about skill development and how good the coach is. Look how involved we are in their education. Way more than any generation before us. In Ontario, public schools, they have an agenda book system. And I think that's probably alive and well here in British Columbia too, where teachers put the homework in the agenda book and the agenda book goes home and mom's hand goes into knapsack and pulls out agenda book to oversee homework while cooking nutritious meal and monitoring screen time. You have to have an island kitchen to raise children. How else could you do all these things at once? To check the homework, to sign off that it's been done, agenda book back in knapsack, knapsack goes to school, teacher's hand into knapsack. This is not an agenda book, it's a homework espionage law. And so, us adults are hovering over children's experience all the time. One way to really drive this home is to get you to imagine yourself in a particular situation with your child. It really brings to light the kind of context in which we're all raising our children. We're all victims of this shift. I mean, victims, we're beneficiaries too. We know a lot more about kids. It's great. But we're all caught up in something bigger than ourselves. Picture yourselves in a park for a moment. Imagine you're in your neighborhood park with your daughter. Let's make her 4 years old. You may have to go back in time. Okay? You're hanging out. It's a nice sunny day. You've been to Starbucks. You're sipping your latte on the park bench. Okay? And you weren't expecting this, but she's decided to go into the sandbox to play in the sand for a bit. You've not brought any sand toys today. Bad parent. There's a much better parent than you at the park today. She supplies her daughter with all the latest and greatest sand play equipment. Designed to build neuronal connections. So she's in there rocking her sand toys, the castle mold and the sifter, the little wheel that spins. And so your girl is in there ready to create some play, but wow, look at this stuff. It's unbelievably good stuff. She wants it. The other girl is not giving it up, but she really wants it. Still, no, there's a struggle in the sandbox. And in the struggle, your daughter bonks her on the head with the sifter. And she starts to cry. Okay? Now, I want you to, you're over there on your bench with your latte, as mentioned. Now, imagine that another parent who's closer to the scene steps in and talks to your child sternly. Hey, you can't do that. You can't just take her stuff. Look, you made her cry. That's not okay. Now give it back. That's not all right. Okay. That got your attention, right? That's an intense moment. Right? Question, what would you do? As you think about that question, let me make a suggestion to you. Whatever you're going to do next in that moment is very likely to be driven by your emotions. in an intense moment like this, and in fact, in a lot of our parenting, what we do is emotion-driven. So a really great rule of thumb in parenting, cannot stress this one enough, is this. If you can identify what you're feeling, if you can name your emotion, now you have a fighting chance of not necessarily acting out on it. You're just a chance, but at least you have a chance. You still might, but at least you have a chance. If you don't name the feeling, you're doomed to act out on that feeling. It's going to go right into behavior. So the real question here is, what's your emotional response to this scene? What are you feeling? There's no right or wrong answer here. What comes to mind?
Anger.
Anger. I know you're not the only one. Yeah. And we're talking anger at the other parent, right? Excuse me, buddy, I'm the parent here. I'll do the parenting. Thank you very much. Maybe push him over on your way to the sandbox, right? Yeah. Push him out of the way anyway. Yeah, for sure. You're not alone. Any other responses?
Guilt.
Sorry?
Guilt.
Guilt, yeah. And you're not alone, for sure. Embarrassment. Kind of like, is that because kind of like you just bonked her on the head with the sifter? Is that... Yeah. Guilt over her conduct? Yeah. Because I've had some parents say, feeling guilty that they didn't bring the right sand equipment. It should never have happened in the first place. These emotions, the anger, the guilty, embarrassed response, as if I just bonked her on the head with the sifter, they really illustrate our generation of parents because they tell you how deeply we identify with the parenting role. We really see ourselves as on the hook for our kids' behavior. What that means is when our kids screw up in the world, it's very easy for us to feel like it's a sign of parental incompetence. And we don't even know that's what we're feeling. It's an implicit, in the background idea. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to suggest that a lot of you have been operating with this in your mind without even realizing it. When my kid screws up in the world, it's a sign that I've screwed up. You know it's not logical, you know it's not true, but it has an emotional truth that's so compelling to our generation of parents that it's very likely, unless you were able to name those emotions, that you're going to get up off that park bench and into that sandbox saying to your daughter, hey, what are you doing? That's not okay. Give her stuff back. Oh, right, you already did, because I'm reparenting here. What's best for your child? Here there's a clear right and wrong. What's best for your child is that you stay in that park bench, for sure. And maybe thank that parent later if you can. If you're just keeping yourself from pushing them over, just stay in the park bench. Why is it better? Because in the first instance, what he just learned was, when I do dumb stuff, bad stuff happens. It's a natural consequence. It's a non-catastrophic, painful failure, and it's how we learn. It's not how we sometimes learn, it's how we always learn. What does he learn, though, when you get off the bench and get in his face? He learns when I do dumb stuff, mom freaks out, dad freaks out. And instead of learning how to manage herself in the big bad world, she learns how to manage you. And that's what our kids are getting better and better at, managing our adult minds. Because we really are turning them into pleasers, appeasers. We have two different types of anxiety problems right now. I'm going to call them the boys style and the girls style. But girls go for the boys style and boys go, but you'll see why I name it that way. One young man who dropped out of first-year university, he's a growing demographic. 1 in 3 first-year students drop out. 30%. They're not ready. This boy, Stephen, came from a good family in Toronto. He's one of those guys, though, whose favorite subjects were like gym and recess. So for his mom and dad, every parent-teacher interview was kind of the same. They say, oh, you're Stephen's parents, lovely to meet you, great boy, never a behavior problem, cooperative, not really living up to his potential, not doing all the work. So mom and dad would go back home and say, come on, Stephen, we need to see more effort out of you. This isn't good enough. And when he was 2, and it was appropriate, Stephen would say, okay, I'll try harder. And then in grade 5, and they said it again, he said, okay, I'll try harder. And in grade 8, he said, okay, I'll try harder. And then in grade 10, he said, okay, I'll try harder. But it seemed clear to Stephen's parents that no matter what, one thing was clear, they had to keep on the job. Because if they stopped managing him like this, he would do nothing. So they stayed on him, and they monitored his tests, and they threatened to take his cell phone away if he didn't get a better mark. And he learned how to do enough to please them, and as he got older, he learned how to, well, frankly, lie. Please and appease, avoid and evade. But they were very diligent parents, and together Stephen and his parents graduated high school with a 74. And they were accepted into Concordia University, which is where they headed at the end of August. Mom and Dad, launching him on his new career, hopes high, headed back to Toronto. Stephen loved it. The next week was Frosh Week. Best week of his life. Had a ball. But the following Monday, classes began, and Stephen crossed the campus to his first class. He was a bit late, a bit hungover. He got a seat in an auditorium bigger than this, way at the back, the stack of papers, course description. They were all stapled together, the course description, when the tests would be, when the exams, when the essays due. Then there were 3 pages of required readings. And then there were 6 pages of recommended readings. You just skip those, they're only recommended. He counted the page, 10 pages. This isn't the readings themselves, this is just the names of the readings. You know, his heart on a sand. He had to read all this stuff and say clever stuff about it to please that professor way down on stage we could hardly see. I mean, it was a despairing moment for him. He went back to his dorm, he waited for his buddies to get back, they went on the town, they did some partying, did some drinking, stayed up as late as he could, crashed, and the next morning he just hit snooze and he never went back to class again. But he was an articulate guy, and here's what he said to me. The first thing he needed to talk about was how terrible he felt about what he'd done to his parents. He was filled with guilt and shame. He sobbed. Big, strong, athletic guy. He said, my parents are amazing people. They're loving, they're supportive, they gave me every chance to succeed, and I blew it. He felt awful. Then he talked about his vision of life, and he said, you know, everyone's always told me, go to school and work hard to get good marks so you can go to a good university. Or you can work hard to get good marks so you can get a good job. But you can work hard, you get good money, and then you die. It's a quote. He had a name for this vision. He called it the looming conveyor belt of life. And we're making reality look like this to a lot of young people. And increasingly, young people are jumping off of it. And it's more often the boys than the girls. They're heading to alternative realities, to the bong in the basement, Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, anywhere where there's no anxiety at all. And I've seen some young girls go for that as well. If that's the boy's solution to the looming conveyor belt of life, can you picture the girl's solution? It's to jump on the conveyor belt and run like that. And you might be thinking, well, what's wrong with that? She's getting good marks, but there's lots wrong with it. These are the young people who are diagnosing with anxiety disorders. They have eating disorders of marks. And in fact, interestingly, eating disorders are getting much less right now because there's another number for people to neurotically fixate on and get a sense of control. It's an unhealthy focus on achievement. Achievement seen as a mark.